What is up? Welcome back to Drummers on Drumming, a podcast powered by Big Fat Snare Drum. My name is Ben Hilsinger, and I've been deep into working on the second book lately, which has me going back through a lot of the older conversations from this podcast, and one that really stood out again was my conversation with Steve Goold. If you don't know Steve, he is actually the Steve of Steve's Donut, which is pretty fun. He's also played with Sara Bareilles, Owsley, Matt Kearney, Scary Pockets, and so many more. But more than the resume, I was reminded how insightful he is. There's this part where he talks about there being no neutral notes, like every note carries weight, it's never just filler. And that idea has been rattling around in my head since I revisited the chat. Anyways, I wanted to share it with you again, especially because Steve just put out his first release under his own name, which is a live recording called Solo Improvisations on the Drum Set, and you can watch the whole thing on YouTube. It's very inspiring, and the links to Steve will be in the show notes, as always. I hope you enjoy the conversation. I also realized, going back to all these earlier episodes, how high-pitched my voice is. I don't know what was going on. It's probably nerves. I guarantee it was nerves. And also how I didn't have my microphone in my headphones, so I'm screaming the entire time. I apologize, but I did think this conversation was worth pushing up to the top. So I hope you enjoy the 5 records that helped shape Steve Goold into the very well-rounded appreciator, interpreter, and performer of music he is today. Cheers. The number one is a band that, so I'm from Seattle, and I feel that it's sacrilegious that I never got into them, but it's Go off Verses by Pearl Jam. And yeah, if you just want to set it up.
Well, the setup is that when I started playing drums in 1991, that was like when Pearl Jam was on the record cycle of 10, like their first album, their like breakthrough record. And Nirvana had put out Nevermind, and Green Day was just about to release Dookie, and Stone Temple Pilots, their first record, Core. The alternative post, like the glam rock, butt rock thing in the 80s, like moving past that into the 90s thing, that was right when I started playing. So this is all really formative music for me, just from the perspective of 11-year-old, 12-year-old Steve hearing drumming for the first time after having learned to play the drums myself. You know, obviously having heard music in the 80s when I was a child, but not knowing how to play drums, I'm not connecting the dots of what I'm hearing to what I could do on the instrument. Figured out how to play drums, and the first album that I started listening to closely after I learned how to play drums was Pearl Jam, was 10. And then I got really into it, so when Verses came out, which I think was 92 or 93, I was a little better at drumming, and I was more excited about Pearl Jam, and this opening track kind of bowled me over the way the whole thing worked. I'm so excited about this entire record, but in particular, this first track, Go, is just like, it's a kind of like a revisiting of the earliest version of Steve being super pumped about drums. There isn't a track that would do that more than this one. That moment, that opening sequence, I remember the placement of the kick drums in that pattern, like boom, 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 like that was just something that I'd never heard anybody do that, and I didn't know how to do it at first. When I heard it, I knew what it was, but I didn't know how to play it. And it was one of the first things that I remember experiencing that. Like, oh, I hear what's happening, but I can't get my foot to actually do it. I had to go really slow and kind of like deconstruct the whole thing. I like how you can almost hear them just like sound checking in a way. They keep like starting and stopping. Dave Abbruzzese playing with such like cool pocket. I love the way the like weight of the drums feel, even though the snare is tuned really high and kind of almost piccolo-ish tone. But he's playing like he really means it, and then they stop and they do that kind of like 7-cycle polyrhythm thing. It's like a 7/4 measure right before they drop into the downbeat of the tune, where they all hit together.
Yeah,
he like counts it off 2, 3, 4, like that. The math of that again for like 12-year-old me. It's like prog rock kind of, and I'm like trying to figure out how that all works, trying to like wrap my head around what exactly that was, so that I could count the tune off for myself and kind of imagine myself playing it. I did this thing back then because people that were older than me, they're like, hey, if you want to learn how to get better at the drums, if you want to grow as a musician, you should just play along with the records that you like. And I was like, oh, cool idea. I just can't do that because it's 1992 and I don't have a stereo system that's loud enough to compete with my drum set. And I don't even have like headphones or whatever. All I have is this little like tape player radio thing. And it's not anywhere near the volume that I would need it to be to play along with the music. So I did this exercise all the time called the imaginary band, or that's what I call it now with my students. But it's basically like I would listen to the tune until I had it memorized, and then I would press stop on the tape and run downstairs to the basement where my drums were, and then play along with the song as if the rest of the band was in my head. And like I was listening to the lyric and listening to the guitar parts, and eventually I had the first album 10 and then verses. Like I had the whole album memorized with like all of the parts in my head, like the bass lines and the guitar lines. And I would get home from school and like perform the whole record like it was a concert, and I would like imagine I'm just by myself in the basement playing along with what feels like the full band, and then kind of like finishing the song and imagining that there was like applause, and then like counting off the next tune. I would burn hours and hours after school doing that at age 13. I remember a lot of the performances took place in the club kind of atmosphere where they shot their video for Even Flow, because it's just like a live performance video.
Okay.
I'd seen that on MTV, and it's like, oh, that's the kind of place that Pearl Jam plays concerts. So that was the kind of place that I transported to in my imagination.
Yeah. Did that influence the way you tuned your drums? I know you did mention how high-pitched that snare drum is, but did you try and make yourself sound like that as well?
Totally. One of the first pieces of gear that I bought after the initial drum set that my parents got me, which was just like a generic beginner brand called Sunlight, I got a 13x4 Premier snare drum. Like it was like a birch or something. Like the wood was just like a blonde color, 13-inch by 4-inch depth, and I could kind of crank it up to that like Spin Doctors kind of tone that everybody was going for back then.
Sure. And it's been like 4 minutes since you listened to it, but is he playing quarter notes or eighth notes?
On the hats?
Yeah.
Dude, it's quarters. That's something I picked up from Dave Abbruzzese really early, and then have subsequently realized was more of like a Max Weinberg thing in Bruce Springsteen's band.
Yeah.
Like smashing quarter notes on the sloshy hi-hats instead of always eighth notes. Like that tempo, that's pretty quick. Right? What is that? Like 130, 135?
Yeah,
and like there's not a lot of room to play eighth notes. So if he were to force the issue with the eighth notes, everything would feel a little more cluttered. So it's like he's kind of gracefully gliding over the top of that with a lot of power. It's still playing at that faster BPM. The unison that's happening between the guitar and the bass, they're both playing that riff, which is like a lot of notes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember young me was kind of like, oh, when the bass player's playing a lot of notes, I should play a lot of notes with him.
Sure.
And then, you get a little bit older and realize, oh, man, oftentimes the bass feels way better if I just let him take all those busy notes and I myself stand in the background with something more spacious. And then the two kind of complement each other instead of just always assuming that I will like unison double what someone else in the band is doing. In fact, I remember one of my good buddies, Chris Morrissey, he was the MD when I was in Bareilles' band. And he plays in Mark Giuliana's band now. Like he's like a jazz guy.
Oh, wow.
He and I grew up playing jazz together in Minnesota. And I remember like 20, 21 years old, we were playing in a trio with this guitar player. And he said to me once, he's like, I feel like, Steve, every time I play something, you just like try to play along with me the same thing. Like you imagine that the only way for us to play together is for you to double what I'm doing. But sometimes, like if I'm playing something, I want you to play something that marries well without doubling, like complementing instead of doubling.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, oh wow, that's a great idea, Chris. Thank you. I mean, like kind of like feeling foolish for having not thought of that myself, but also grateful for. I mean, he and I are the same age. We kind of came up with the same. Like he would also tell you that Pearl Jam was one of his like initial favorite bands, even though now he plays jazz, and we were playing jazz together at that like college age period. But like we have the same kind of musical pedigree of development, and to have him speak in also like. We're on the same page, we're on the same age group, we're on the same point in our musical journeys, but he still had like really great points to help me grow, and yeah, owe a lot to that guy. I want to know what the bass player is doing. Sure. I want to know what he's doing, and then I want to choose to play exactly what he's playing or choose not to, and I want to be able to give you an explanation for why I made that choice. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's certainly not a hard and fast rule or law that I have to just double what the bass player is doing.
All right, so number 2, Oh No, the Radio, off the Owsley self-titled. You just said start from the beginning and play through the first minute. Let's listen to it, and then we'll discuss it.
Okay. Okay, so I want to say this quick about Will Owsley. It's not a band; it's just a guy. His name was Will Owsley. He lived in Nashville, played on a bunch of people's records, like as a session guy. I think he was in Amy Grant's band for a little while too, as the guitar player. Wow. He's the songwriter and vocalist on that stuff, and he committed suicide, I think, 15 years ago or so, tragically. Obviously, like mental health is a real thing, and you know it's plagued the art world for the entirety of at least the modern music industry. So like, rest in peace, Will Owsley. Yeah, he made 2 records of his own stuff before passing. That's Chris McHugh on drums, and Chris McHugh is one of my heroes. Dude, when I first came across his playing was in the 90s. He was in a Christian band called Whiteheart for a little while, and then I didn't realize that was him in Whiteheart, and then in the 2000s, when I started paying attention to session players, like especially in the country world, in Nashville, the Christian and country stuff, started seeing his name over and over again and started realizing that every time I really liked the drumming, it was always him playing. He plays on a lot of the stuff that Dan Huff produces, like all the Rascal Flatts records and almost everything that Keith Urban did for the first half of Keith's career. And he plays on like every Carrie Underwood record, and his pocket just feels incredible to me. So there's that. And like he's always working in environments where the engineers and the techs are just dialed in and the sounds are incredible. Yeah. But then he's got this extra little degree of smartness that I notice in his playing, where he's always playing the thing that feels like the obvious right choice, which is kind of how modern pop country works. That genre doesn't revolve around like innovation in the parts. It's not like indie rock or stuff where people are getting really creative about how to approach. It's just backbeat, straight ahead fills, and yet there's always these little ingredients in Chris's playing, whether it's in the grooves, his kick drum patterns, or even in the fills or whatever. They're not run-of-the-mill. They're interesting, and it's interesting on like a couple layers deeper than the surface. So like I always find myself really enamored with his choices, even though it's a Carrie Underwood track and all of his choices fit within the goalposts of just that kind of music, you know, like radio friendly and maybe allegedly canned or formulaic, but not McHugh. I've just gotten so much out of listening to him. Like I would consider myself a disciple of his playing, even though I've never met him personally. A good example of what I mean in that song just now is after that first chorus, the way he drops those eighth note triplets at the end into the downbeat, between the snare drum and the floor tom. It fits perfectly in the moment, but it's not the kind of thing that anybody expects right then. But the unexpectedness doesn't throw me, at least as a listener. I'm not like, whoa, that was out of left field and out of nowhere, and I think maybe a little bit forced, and maybe the drummer was just trying to prove to me that he knows what eighth note triplets are.
We hear you, bud.
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get it. You went to music school. It's like, no, he actually sounds like, I mean, to me it feels really coherent and interesting in the context of the whole song, which is, I guess that's like an example of how Chris McHugh impacted me. It's like, here's something that the artist is going to feel great about, the audience isn't going to be distracted by, but anybody in the room who's a drummer is going to notice a little bit of additional sauce compared to what the standard approach would be. Using the drums to create a counter melody that functions like a hook. I feel like, I mean, Dave Grohl didn't show up on any of those 5 moments, but he's a master at that, at playing fills that become part of the song, where, you know, in most instances the drum fill is kind of like just a transition device to get you from one part of the song to the next, but the fill itself doesn't actually matter in the minds of the listeners. It's not memorable, and guys who can create memorable hooky drum fill moments, that's what makes people want to air drum, and it's like such a wonderful contribution to the music. That entire record, the self-titled Owsley record, it's one of my Desert Island records.
This episode is brought to you by Big Fat Snare Drum, specifically the Big Fat Snare Drum Bargain Bin. We're talking brand new heads that aren't scratched or dented. We just have too many, so get them for cheap. We've also dropped some new full coverage textile cloth designs, and our Pick 3 bundles are now live. It's an easy way to outfit your whole kit with many of our most popular heads. Just choose one of these 3 size sets, 10, 12, 14, 12, 14, 16, or 13, 14, 16. Go check out all of that at bigfatsnaredrum.com. All right, number 3, Mojo Pin off Grace by Jeff Buckley, and that's Matt Johnston. Okay, I have to interrupt. This is the second time I've done this in this podcast. It's Matt Johnson. Damn it, Ben. So it's off that track, start at 3:45, and then the moment starts at 4:19. But yeah, let's just start at 3:45.
That's like the third time around that moment has happened in the tune. Like the turnaround prior to a verse, he's got that like Afro-Cuban thing happening, and then dragging the snare drum along, like however you want to count the tempo. If these are the quarter notes, then those are the triplet eighth notes. And he plays a figure that takes the triplet eighth notes, like he goes to straight eighth notes and then just quarter notes, and it feels like he's got the snare drum on like a dial on a drum machine, and he's just like turning the dial down, like it's, you know, like in Ableton, like it's just like via processing, it's just like a downturn in tempo, like a, what do they call it, Accelerando or whatever. It's slowing down manually, like someone's imposing a slowdown on it, but he's just like playing that, and he's just accessing his knowledge of subdivision. There's a bunch of reasons why that track would stand out to me, that whole record, one of which is just like Jeff Buckley singing like a Hindustani vocalist on like a Ravi Shankar recording or something. Like Jeff Buckley's singing like an angel while also playing in like rock context. All that stuff was pretty influential for me when I first heard that music in like 2000 or 2001 when I first heard that stuff. And then listening to the complexity of Matt's subdivision awareness. Mostly what I'm saying is that it sounds like a dude who plays jazz, understands world music, understands rhythms that aren't just rock and roll, and then revisiting a rock and roll context with that understanding and having the kind of nuance to bring into those little moments that are just like kind of flying under the radar, but those details just, man, it gets me going. I'm so into it.
It's so crazy as a drummer thinking that something you do it's definitely not a throwaway, but something so small could influence someone 20 years later and continue to influence someone. Such a cool no note left behind.
Yes, I have a friend in Nashville who says that you don't ever play notes that are neutral. The notes that you're playing are either helping the song or they're detracting from the song. So you've got to treat every note that you play as if you're trying to be helpful. Because, I mean, I feel like I remember the periods of my life as a drummer where I thought the decisions I were making were like more or less neutral. Like I could just kind of play whatever I wanted, it didn't matter. Not realizing that if I'm not aiming for my notes to be helpful, then they're probably unhelpful. Like the thing is probably worse because I'm playing those notes and I'm just telling myself that they're neutral and that it's fine and that it doesn't matter. Yeah. And I can just kind of like keep myself entertained with all of these extra notes that are actually just bogging the whole thing down.
So the next one is Where Does a Stranger Go on Christmas Eve off Body Popping by Happy Apple.
Body popping. But it's the title.
Body popping. It's spelled body, and I don't even know why. I think because I mentioned Brody Simpson. So
the full title of it is Body Popping, Moonwalking, Top Rocking, and it's all like breakdancing moves. Okay, so here's a little background on that band. Happy Apple, they're all from Minneapolis. The drummer's name is Dave King. He's really well known.
That's Dave.
That's Dave. He's not known for being in that band because Happy Apple sounds so similar to the Bad Plus, and the Bad Plus has just always had a lot more of the music industry machine behind it in terms of marketing and whatever. But Happy Apple is a lot older than the Bad Plus. I think Happy Apple formed in like 96 or so, and that's Michael Lewis on saxophone. Michael is in Bon Iver. So if you recognize his tone, like on a tenor, I remember when, I guess it was the second Bon Iver record where some like saxophone playing started showing up like in the band. I'm like, man, it sounds like Michael, and then I found out that it was. His sound is really signature, and I really love his musicianship in general. He played bass in Andrew Bird's band for a while. He's just Michael's one of the like staple corners of the Minneapolis music scene, which is where I'm from originally. That's Eric Fratsky on bass, and he's playing electric bass, even though it's a jazz group. You know, like upright bass is maybe the more typical sound, but the electric bass affords all of this polyphony, like playing more than one note at a time, almost like a guitar, which, as you get to know Eric, like he's first a guitar player. He's in a bunch of metal bands in the Twin Cities, and like he plays the bass like it's a guitar a lot, and it really helps in that group because the saxophone is a monophonic instrument. So to have a instrument that can play chords and intervals, and then the great Dave King on drums, who was my teacher, 1999. I met Dave in 98 and started studying with him in 99, 2000, and 2001, all like real intensely. He was a groomsman in my wedding in 2002, and we've been close friends ever since. That particular track, I think that was recorded in 2000 or right around there. I was around for a lot of the recording of that record, and I remember seeing those guys play that song live a few times before it ever turned out on a record, and he's using a mallet on the snare drum. and then his other hand is just his hand, like not like a stick, and he's doing a ton of muffling of the drum manually with his hands so that he hits it and it sustains, and then on the next hit when he hits it it's totally dead because his hand is there, and he's kind of like lifting the hand up and down and then like going over to the floor tom, hitting the floor tom, and doing the same kind of like controlling of the sustain of the instrument, which is something that up until that point I'd never really considered. Like the drums aren't something that I thought of sustain as an option for me to have influence on as the player. Like obviously the bassist in the band, like, you know, strum a note and then grab it and it doesn't sustain anymore. And I guess you can do that with cymbals, right? Like maybe like the end of a song, I hit a cymbal and then grab it so it doesn't sustain. But the snare drum having a length to it that I would cut off, that I just had never thought of that. When I saw Dave playing that song maybe for the first time, would have been like 98 or so. I was only 18 years old, and just like he just broke a lot of the rules for what I thought the drums, you know, the way you would play a drum set. I had myself in a box about how to play a drum set with a bunch of walls and parameters in that box that I didn't realize I had put there. And watching him play, and that track in particular, the way he controls his touch, he's playing softly, and like just the rhythms and the shape of the sustain, it really changed me. Like I said, it just expanded the box that I had put myself in as far as how to play a drum set. It's like you use sticks, and he's got mallets, and you have sticks in both hands, and it's like, you know, he just has a stick in one hand, and then you just hit the drum and let it go, and he's like, nope, I'm going to hit the drum and then I'm going to stop it, and then sometimes I'm going to hit it with my hand already on there, and it's going to sound like a weird kind of blip compared to the actual tone that the drum can produce. And all of that stuff was paradigm shifting for me. Dave King is a creative genius, and not only is he just an absolute juggernaut badass at the drum set, he's also really articulate and very well spoken about subject matter that is inherently dense and complex. Like understanding art the way that he understands it, it doesn't work very well to just kind of grope for words and try to like come up with metaphors that don't work and then say to the student, like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, they're just not going to learn anything. And he never did that. He always just had really eloquent, effective ways to convey these really deep points. And again, like at age 19, when I met him, nobody was saying to me, hey, by the way, he's really avant-garde and really out there creatively. I just assumed that the way he thought was how everybody thought. And then it wasn't until a lot later that I was like, oh, that dude is special. When I first started taking lessons from him, it was $20 an hour. Then after about 6 months of that, he offered me free lessons in exchange for driving him around to some of his gigs, because he and his wife at the time, like, she was working like a night situation and like needed the car. He's like, Steve, how about can you drive me some gigs coming up, and like I'll just give you free lessons instead? Maybe we could do like 2 lessons a week to make up for it. And I'm like, yes. So now I'm getting 2 lessons a week for free, and I'm driving him all over town to his gigs that he had with various people, and getting to like watch the show and hang out with the band afterwards and meet these people and rub shoulders and like see what it's like on the street level of what it means to be a freelance musician in Minneapolis. And it was all like unbelievably formative in terms of my development as a musician. And I would not be where I am now if it weren't for those years. I mean, I saw Happy Apple play live probably 50 or 60 times between the years of 1998 and 1999. Like just in there, like I would just go see them play almost every week. And it's like, these guys are definitely improvising, because that's what a jazz context is. And yet Dave's control, and even like where his eyes would move on the kit and the fluidness of his motions, it looks as if he's playing something that he has rigorously rehearsed, something that he has completely scripted, and now he's just going through the motions. Like, that's how smooth his execution is, even though he's coming up with, I know for a fact that he's coming up with all of this stuff on the spot. There's zero like frantic energy. There's zero scrambling. You can't see him trying to come up with what to do next. It's almost as if he's in complete control of what's coming next, even though he's spontaneously composing it. It's just breathtaking.
All right, so last one. It's let's see if I can pronounce this right. The Truth off of Speak by Dogs of Peace.
Yeah.
And you said it's the first minute and then again at 110.
So that's a Nashville session guy. His name is John Hammond. Plays on a lot of Christian records, and with like a cover band called the Smoking Section. It's pretty rad. His brother Mark Hammond produces a lot of records in town. I think Mark plays drums too, but John's just like legendary Nashville session drummer. I'm not sure how old he is. He's definitely older than me. I came across his playing as I was just getting into the whole like read the liner notes of the session guys period, like I was saying with country music and stuff in the early 2000s. I started paying attention to that. That band is Jimmy Lee Sloas on bass, who's another like Nashville legend, and Gordon Kennedy on guitar and vocals. All three of them are just like session, just heavyweights. They're so good at their respective instruments, and they know so much. And you can just hear it in how clean all of their performances are. So, like, one of the things that hits me super hard about that particular excerpt is, just, like you said, like how his shuffle is just impeccable. The pocket is unreal. And he's playing really complicated stuff with dynamic control, not just rhythmic control, but dynamic control that's just next level. The thing that really blew my mind about that track, though, is that fill, where he's playing floor tom on the right hand, rack tom on the left hand, like, and then repeat that, two more, and then two kick drums. So like groups of six, like like that kind of like triplet 16th note thing. He does it for the full measure. It's like a measure of six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bah! And then on beat 6 he hits the snare drum, like, bah! But leading into the snare drum, he plays one more right hand on the floor tom. So the like quarter note pulse, or the dotted quarter note pulse that leads into that, I guess what figure would that be? It doesn't matter. The point is, like, the cycle that leads into that snare drum is 7 notes, not 6, where he takes the same amount of space where he's been playing 6 notes the whole time, and then just squeezes like one more note in, which just kind of blew my mind thinking about how that mathematically works out. And the only reason I know that is that he's one of the first guys that I ended up getting in touch with via social media. This would be right around like 2008 or so. I had, my MySpace page, and I had a blog on WordPress, and I would write on my blog all the time. And I used MySpace to reach out to a bunch of, kind of famous drummers that I didn't have their phone number, but here's like, the first iteration of social media where suddenly these guys are available for me to chat with if I just ask them. And it was interesting because they were all like really flattered. Remember, I talked to Billy Ashbaugh, I talked to Anton Fig, Paul Maybury, talked to John Hammond. These dudes are not necessarily famous in any real sense of that word. They don't have this barrage of DMs on their social media, especially because social media is so new at that time. So all of them responded, like immediately to my inquiries. And I was just asking John, like, how did you play this fill at the beginning of The Truth? Like, how's that go? And he explained it to me, and I kind of like worked it out. A couple years later, we kept in touch. A couple years later, I was in Nashville for rehearsals with Owl City, And it was the first time that I'd ever been in Nashville for like a very professional reason, you know? So I felt like go out on a limb and ask John if maybe he wants to like if I can get together with him and he could give me a drum lesson in person or something. And he was like, no way, I'm not going to give you a drum lesson in person. How about we go out to lunch instead? And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, we were at sound check rehearsing for the tour, and he's like, I'll come by and pick you up, and we'll go to the pharmacy. Like, what time are you gonna break for lunch? Like, probably like 1 or so. He's like, okay, is it cool if I come a little earlier and listen to you rehearse? And I was like, yeah, that's totally fine. He came at 11 and listened to us for 2 hours. And then we went out to lunch, and he bought lunch for me. And the whole time was like sharing with me all of these players that he knew because of his age, and like all these guys from the 70s that I didn't know about. And he just went out of his way to be helpful and like give me an experience that really shaped me as a student of the instrument, as an up and coming professional myself. Just very like mentor actions on his part that were not necessary. He didn't charge me any money for it. It wasn't like he was just there to help, and really helped. And I was so anyway, huge shout out to John for being an absolute badass of a drummer, and like the innovation and the coolness of that fill, but more importantly, the kind of like the demonstration to me of how to handle one's position in the music world. Like obviously he can tell that I'm really looking up to him, and instead of capitalizing on that and kind of like looking down on me and like basking in the cool points of like my enamoring, instead he just like came alongside me and like just taught me a lot and demonstrated so much generosity and intentionality with kindness. That really left a mark on me.
How'd you play knowing he was watching you? Was that the most nerve-wracking thing ever?
I think I played pretty well. I mean, I felt good about it. He was complimentary. We still have meals together on occasion when I'm in Nashville, and he'll mention like, yeah, I ordered one of those big fat snare drum things with the tambourine jingles on it. I'm really pumped to get it. You know, like again, this dude is like a generation further down the road than me in terms of the music industry and his career path and all this kind of stuff, and he is as excited about y'all's product as any of us are. Dude, I went and saw him do a session. I was in Nashville to do a clinic at a church, and reached out to him and you want to get dinner? Like, oh man, I'm totally booked, but I am going to be doing a session. I think it's called Day Wind. It's like a Southern gospel label. It's like classic Southern gospel music. And he's doing a session for that stuff where he's like sight reading. It's like the kind of sight reading where you've got 2 music stands because it's 7 pages and they're all taped together. And I came in to watch them track. Dave Cleveland was playing guitar, who's like kind of a Nashville legend. This guy Jason Webb on keys. Watched these guys one take sight reading like a 6.5 minute gospel song. And he had his rack of snare drums in there, and they just one take the whole thing, and they come in and it's like, yep, that's it. The producer's like, yep, that's the one. And so then Dave Cleveland goes back in to overdub acoustic, and Webb goes in there to overdub B3, but John doesn't have to do any overdubs, so he brings me back into the studio to like show me his snare drum rack. And he's got his like flight case where you remove the front, and there's just like 16 drums all on shelves, and those drums, like they're all like dialed into the tuning that he wants for them.
Exactly.
Instead of using the same drum to try. This is a long story, but I'm just like he's not the kind of guy who's using muffling treatment on the same drum over the course of a live gig. Yeah. He's in the studio one taking stuff at a pro level. I mean, like that dude, that really impacted me. I kind of sat in the control room watching these guys sight read and play like they had rehearsed the tune 20 times, and just impeccable. It's so inspiring, and again, like so much further down the road than where I am right now. I'm 40 years old. I've been doing this for a while, but I can't do that, and I hope someday I can, watching YouTube tutorials, practicing on the practice pad, reading articles in Modern Drummer magazine or whatever. It's like there's also these like real life kind of fly on the wall observing experiences that I've had where I can trace a lot of very important lessons to those settings, which I think is why it's so important to get involved in like a scene.
Absolutely.
To have like an actual teacher or a series of teachers, as opposed to just like signing up for a web-based thing or, you know, just practicing on your own at home. Like getting around other musicians and watching how they do it and learn. It's definitely a big part of my journey, at least.
And that's the show. If you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, do that. It helps more people find the show, so it'll get bigger and better, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sell out one day. But you'll be an OG listener that can brag to all your friends. Anyways, why don't you go and check us out at bigfatsnaredrum.com and follow us on all the socials. Just search for Big Fat Snare Drum and you will find us. The show is edited in part using iZotope RX Audio Editor. It's amazing, so go check that out at iZotope.com. And thanks again to Gunnar Olsen for the theme music. Bye!